Have you ever stopped to think that what you believe might not just be a personal thing, but actually a moral one? Well, today we're jumping into a really fascinating clash of ideas. It's the philosophical challenge that we might have a moral duty to doubt versus a religious framework that argues true faith is actually a product of reason itself. So let's just get right to the heart of it with this question. This really flips the whole conversation on its head. It's not asking, is God real? Instead, it's asking, is the very act of believing something without enough evidence an ethical mistake? You see how that shifts the whole debate from what's true to what's right? And this line, wow, it really captures the essence of the skeptical position, doesn't it? The argument here is that holding a belief without solid, verifiable proof isn't just, an intellectual oops. It's a failure of our moral duty to be truthful and rational beings. Okay, so let's unpack that argument a little bit. Where does this whole idea even come from? And why do people feel so strongly that finding evidence is basically a moral requirement? Well, this idea comes from a field in philosophy called the ethics of belief. And the core idea is pretty simple. Our beliefs don't just stay inside our own heads. They affect how we act, and they have real-world consequences. So because of that, we have an ethical duty to make sure those beliefs are actually solid. And that gets us to the main rule of thumb here. The strength of your belief should match the strength of your evidence. A tiny bit of evidence might justify a little bit of belief. But as the famous saying goes, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. It all comes down to intellectual honesty. And this is exactly why skeptics see it as a huge moral issue, not just some academic debate. They point to very real harms that can come from beliefs that aren't backed up. Think about people rejecting life-saving medicine for faith healing, or doctrines being twisted to justify intolerance, or even holding back scientific progress. They argue the stakes are incredibly high. Now, here's where things get really, really interesting, because this whole line of thinking runs into a big philosophical problem. See, most philosophers agree on something called Doxastic Voluntarism. It sounds super fancy, but the idea is actually simple. You can't choose what you believe. I mean, try it right now. Try to genuinely, truly believe the sky is green. You can't do it, right? You're either convinced by the evidence or you're not. And this is the knockout punch of the skeptical argument. If a person genuinely looks at all the evidence they can find and just isn't convinced, how could a fair and just God possibly hold them responsible for that? How could you be punished for a state of mind you literally cannot will yourself into? It just seems fundamentally unfair. Okay, but that's just one side of the argument. The Quranic perspective offers a direct answer to this challenge, and it frames the whole relationship between faith, reason, and our responsibilities in a completely different light. So, instead of faith being this blind leap in the dark, this framework presents it as the final stop on an intellectual journey. It's not about belief without evidence, but about conviction that comes from evidence. The key word we need to understand here is Iman. Now, it's often translated as faith, but in this context, it's something much more specific. It's not blind acceptance. It's a deep, reasoned conviction, a state of certainty you arrive at after you've really used your mind and reflected on the world. The Quran actually lays out a kind of process. First, it calls on people to use their aql. That's your intellect, your reason. Then you're supposed to engage in tafakkur, which means deep thought, contemplation, reflection. And the result of that active mental process is Iman, that reasoned conviction. It's presented as a clear pathway. And this isn't just some abstract idea. The Quran points directly to the evidence. This verse frames the entire natural world, the cosmos, the cycle of day and night, as signs. But here's the crucial part. They are signs specifically for a people who use reason. It's saying the evidence is out there, but it's for those who are willing to think about it. So if faith is the product of reason, then how does this framework look at disbelief? Well, it's definitely not seen as just a simple lack of belief. It's understood as something way more active and complex. The word for disbelief here is Kufr, and it comes from an Arabic root word that literally means to cover or to conceal. The word itself tells the story. It implies that disbelief isn't just an empty space where belief should be, it's an active choice to cover up a truth that you've already seen or been exposed to. This verse illustrates that idea perfectly. It's talking about people who were presented with something that they themselves recognized as the truth, but they still made the choice to disbelieve in it.
So from this viewpoint, it's not a failure of evidence. It's a willful rejection of what's already known.
And this brings us right to the core of the Quranic argument about responsibility. It sort of agrees that you can't just flip a switch and force yourself to believe something. Instead, your moral accountability lies in the choices that lead up to it. Are you open to asking questions? Are you being honest in your reflections? Are you willing to overcome your own biases and arrogance? Those are the choices that you're responsible for.
All right, so let's put these two really powerful and really different viewpoints side by side and see exactly where they clash.
So on the one hand, you have the skeptical view. It sees faith as belief without evidence, which makes disbelief just an involuntary reaction to not having enough proof. Your moral job is to demand evidence. Then on the other hand, you have the Quranic view. It sees faith, or Iman, as conviction that comes from reason, which makes disbelief, or Kufr, a choice to cover up a truth you've seen. Here, your moral job is to actually use your mind to seek that truth. And that, right there, is the heart of the entire debate. It all boils down to this one profound question. Is the person who doesn't believe simply unable to be convinced by the evidence in front of them? Or, on some level, are they unwilling to see the evidence that's there? And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. No matter which side of this you lean towards, this whole debate forces every one of us to ask, what standards do we set for our own deepest convictions? What really is the true burden of proof for the things we choose to believe?